Hi, I'm Shankar Kamampati. Welcome to this episode of 1 MKB, 1 Minute Knowledge Bite. I've been in several discussions related to selecting a server for virtual machines. There are many considerations. In this video, I'll focus on 4 important technical considerations for a server to provision VMs. The first consideration is the processor. Several questions arise when we think of processors. How many physical processors does a server have? How many physical cores are in each processor? Does the processor use an hyper-threaded model? These are all important questions, so let us get the terminology right first. First, what is a processor? A processor, CPU as we call it, is a physical component. It provides central processing unit capability to a server. There may be more than one processor in a server. It sits in a socket and has physical cores. Okay, so what is a socket? A socket is an array of pins on the motherboard to hold the processor. All right. What is a core? A core is an operation unit within the processor. A single processor may have multiple physical cores. The processor is like a big CPU that sits in the socket, while the cores are like small CPUs within the big CPU that can independently execute threads of execution. Okay, one more term. What is a thread? A thread is a unit of execution in a process that can be executed by a core, which is part of a processor. Many processors use a hyper-threaded model. Again, one more term. So what is hyper-threading? Hyper-threading is running processes in parallel. What it does is it takes a single physical processor core and makes it available to the operating system as two logical cores. So with hyper-threading, effectively the total cores are doubled. That was the first consideration. Now let's go to the second consideration. The second consideration is memory. How much of memory does a server have is important. It is also important to analyze the type of memory. Is it SRAM, DRAM in a particular model of server, and also the amount of cache and the type of cache. Is it L1, L2, L3, how much? So memory is the second consideration. The third consideration is virtualization. So what is virtualization? So it is a method to create virtual servers using one or more physical servers by means of virtualization software like VMware or Hyper-V. Now, virtual processors are assigned to a VM by the virtualization software. It represents a portion of the physical processor that is allocated to the VM. Now, as part of the virtualization software, there is a component called hypervisor that makes it possible to create virtual machines on the same physical machine. When the hypervisor spins up the VMs, it can over-provision, meaning it can assign more vCPUs on a host than there are physical CPUs in the server. So this over-provisioning is generally referred through a ratio, vCPUs to core. So a hypervisor can over-provision vCPUs to the core in a ratio higher than 1:1, so such as 3:1 or 4:1, effectively making that many vCPUs available in the server. So let us look at an example. Let us consider a server with one socket and a processor with 4 cores. So the processor view shows a total number of physical cores to be 4, that is 1 times 4. The operating system view with hyper-threading shows the total number of logical cores as being doubled, that is 8, 2 times 4. Now virtualization comes in. The virtualization view with 4:1 over provisioning shows total vCPUs to be 32, that is 8 times 4. So these 32 vCPUs can then be allocated to VMs using virtualization software such as vCenter in the case of VMware. So that was the third consideration. The fourth one is server expandability. The type and number of expansion slots, ports, dedicated server storage, all these components determine its expandability. More number of slots enables greater scalability at peak load. So server expandability is important because requirements change. The fifth consideration is security related cryptography features. Some servers have secure data encryption built in as a hardware feature using a crypto coprocessor to carry out cryptographic operations. So it's perhaps worth considering that carefully depending on the nature of your business. Last but not the least is the consideration which is related to processor clock speed. The faster the clock speed, the more instructions can be executed per second. Applications can run quickly, but increasing the number of cores on a processor might require slower clock speeds to run more applications simultaneously. So you need to have a balance there. There you have it, the 6 considerations for selecting a server. There may be other considerations too, but these are key. I have elaborated these further in the book. Hope you have found this video to be of value to you. Thank you very much.